Adam was young, restless, and living alone for the first time in a quiet neighborhood, surrounded by towering oaks and low, foggy skies. His house was cozy, a quaint little place, tucked between others much older. But lately, it had lost its charm. Every night, around midnight, he'd hear a faint, hollow noise, like a moan, carried on the wind. The sound drifted from the yard of the house next door, the one that always seemed vacant, despite the occasional flicker of lights from its tall, grimy windows. The first night he heard it, Adam brushed it off as the wind. But when it happened again the next night, and again after that, he couldn't shake the prickling unease creeping over him. The sound was too rhythmic, too intentional, a low, guttural hum, growing louder, then fading, like a chant he couldn't quite make out. Sleep became harder to hold on to. Finally, curiosity and unease got the better of him. On the fourth night, he grabbed a flashlight and slipped out of his back door, breathing in the chilled autumn air. He crept toward the edge of his yard, squinting into the darkness between the trees. For several minutes he heard nothing, just silence and the rustling of leaves. But as he turned to leave, the noise started again, louder and closer than ever before. The flashlight beam caught movement, and Adam's heart pounded as he crept forward. Peering through the trees, he could see several figures, draped in black cloaks, standing in a circle in the neighbor's yard. They were surrounding a small, twisted statue, a crude figure with too many eyes and too many mouths, carved from what looked like bone. The figures were chanting, their voices blending into that same haunting hum he'd heard for nights on end. The statues' mouths seemed to move, or maybe it was a trick of the light. He backed away, heart pounding, hoping they hadn't seen him, praying he could slip back into his house, unseen. But as he turned, his foot caught on a fallen branch, snapping it with a crack. The chanting stopped. He barely dared to breathe as he turned around. All the cloaked figures were facing him, their faces hidden, yet he could feel their eyes drilling into him. He turned and bolted toward his house, but his feet seemed to sink into the earth with every step. Adam stumbled into his yard, scrambling up his steps and throwing himself inside, locking the door and sliding down against it. For a moment, everything was quiet, just his heartbeat echoing in his ears. Then he felt it, a hand on his shoulder, cold, firm, and inescapable. When he opened his eyes, he was in a small, dark room. His hands were bound, his voice muffled by a cloth over his mouth. Panic surged as he realized he couldn't move. He strained to see in the blackness, his eyes searching for any glimmer of light, any indication of where he was. A familiar hum began, softly, growing louder with each beat of his heart.